Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Workflow Wednesday. Hope everybody is doing all right here. We are going to get started in just a few minutes here. We're going to give a few minutes for people to pop in here so we can get started. So we're going to, hopefully you guys are doing well. We're going to be talking about some vectorization contour cut workflow, working with some graphics here that are kind of difficult to deal with. Hopefully we can deal with some of this stuff and kind of show you how some of this will go. It's kind of 2 weeks ago we did a print and cut kind of workflow, and so a lot of people had commented or had mentioned that it would be a good idea if we continued something like that and went more specific on the topic of vectorization and some contour cut tips and tricks. So we're gonna kind of work with some graphics that are a little bit blurry and a little bit difficult to deal with. They've got some noise in them, so hopefully we can do that. So welcome to the stream, everybody. If you're just joining us, we are going to go ahead and get started, I think, here. Most of this demo today is going to be a live demo. We're just going to be jumping right into Flexi and doing some of this. And we got some files we're already preset. So taking vectorized files and contour cutting them. So there's a few things to consider when we do vectorizing, we set up contour cutting. The thing is, ideally, we'd love to always get a high resolution image from, a customer that maybe, has something that they want you to cut or print or something like that. And the reality is that sometimes you get just bad artwork, or somebody created an artwork for them. They no longer have the original files, and all they have is like a bitmap that they pulled off of their website or something like that. So it's super low resolution, and then it kind of ends up on your shoulders to figure out how to deal with it, right? So we're going to jump into some basics of vectorizing here real quick first, and then we'll kind of also mix in some contour cut type stuff as well. So let's get started. So let's jump into Flexi here. I'm going to pull that up here. So I'm going to work through some examples, and I just I pulled these images just off of Google. So we're going to start working with some of this stuff here, and we'll kind of go over each one and how we can make these better. So the first thing is, when you import a graphic into your Flexi, you really want to try and, first thing is to figure out, well, does this, is this object a contour, or sorry, is it a vector? If it is, adding a contour cut is fairly simple. If it's not, if it's a bitmap or a JPEG or a BMP or a PNG, a lot of times those files will have issues that you have to kind of overcome before we even get into the contour cut process. So let's just look at this first one. And so this one here is just an image I pulled off of Google. If we zoom in fairly close here, we can kind of see that it's pretty noisy. You can see on the outside here, it's pretty jagged, pixelated, and you can see on the inside here that you've got a lot of artifacting going on here. So there's two things that we can do with this. First of all, if this is going to be a fairly small decal, then you may not even have to do anything with it. So if I click on this, I can look at my Design Central over here, and I can see that it's a bitmap. So I've got these two little tabs here for bitmaps. So I can click on this third tab here, And I can get some information about this and take a look at the resolution and kind of the state of where it's at. In fact, right now, it looks like it has a transparency on it. So I can even remove that transparency here. So I actually printed this one out earlier today just to kind of see what it would print like. And if I printed it in a small 2 or 3 inch decal, this actually looked pretty decent. And so I could actually get right into printing this if I was going to print this fairly small scale. So depending on the graphic, it may look bad real close, but unless you're going to blow it up, it may not be a problem. So let's just take that route, first of all. What do we do with a graphic like this? It's decent, and then we think that we can actually contour cut this. Well, the first thing that you're going to notice is if I go to my effects menu and I go to my contour cut, when I choose contour, even if I set this to 0, all I get is this bounding box right here. That's because the edges of this bitmap are not transparent or anything like that. So we would need to take care of that first. So if it doesn't have a transparent background, which typically a JPEG doesn't have, or a BMP, now if you get a PNG from a customer, then sometimes they can have a transparent background. So just be aware of that. You might already have a transparent background, sort of like when I imported this one. I actually already had the file with a transparent background, but we're going to assume that we don't have one and that we now want to apply a contour cut. Well, if we're not going to change the graphic or do anything like that, I'm going to go into my bitmap toolbars and we're going to go ahead and make this transparent. So I can click on the Make Transparent button here, and I can then select with my magic wand, simply by left clicking, I can select the area that I want it to grab. Now over here in my Design Central, if I set my tolerance high or low, it will make a difference on what happens here. So if I were to zoom in here and take a look at this, you can see that my selection is following it fairly close, but because I have a high enough tolerance, this nasty blurry stuff here is not really going to be, it's basically being covered within it. So if I reduce this down to on my tolerance and I select the same white color, now you can see what happens. So there's a lot less tolerance, so it has a little bit of leeway on the left and to the right of the color. So if you were picking a red or black, it will try and select some of those gray areas and include it depending on your tolerance. So the higher the tolerance, the more it will select close to that original color. So in this case, 32 is your standard. That's kind of the middle of the road. I'm going to select this again, and now we can see it's given us a pretty decent selection. We're not catching all the ridges, but you're getting decent. So now that I've done that, I can hit apply. And what this does, it effectively removes all the graphic behind it. Now, you can kind of see what it's done here is that it has created kind of like a hyperpixelated effect here. And so, this may be something that you don't want to do. So let's go back and let's just go over here and let's do our make transparent again. Let's just see what else we can do here. So let's maybe we reduce the dollars down to 25 and see what that kind of does for us. Either way, we're probably going to have some issues with this, but zoom in here. So this still doesn't look bad. So I think we'll apply that and see what it does. Again, the nature of this image is going to leave kind of a rough edge on this side. So this may be something that we're going to go ahead and maybe convert over to vector in order for it to really print decent. But let's just say we're going to ignore that fact for now. by making this transparent, what this actually allows us to do now is if we go to, oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, you probably saw me do this, but you do have to click that little green check mark in the Design Central to apply that. Otherwise, it doesn't really apply it. So I hit apply on there, and this is going to give us a transparent background. And the way that we know this is that I can draw something now. I can move it to the back. And now I've got a nice little edge here. Now you can also see that I've got some other issues going on here. This is not ideal. So, you know, we're going to fix that with some of the other options with a vectorization. But so let's grab this, and now let's go to our contour cut. So if we go to Effects and Contour Cut, now if we take a look at, I'm gonna normally you would always use the contour cut colors, but to make it easier on you guys so you guys can see it, I'm going to use a bright, I'm not going to use red because that's the color of the selection window. I'm going to use this lime green. So I'm going to back this out a little bit. So now we can see that because I added that transparency, or I made that background transparent, now it's going to follow the edge of our graphic, and I can hit apply. When I click on the object, you still have that kind of outside box here, this bounding area, but our contour cut now is applied directly to that. In this case, I'm really not happy with the way that turned out. Making the background transparent is always going to have that kind of effect on it. So I'm going to clear this contour cut, and we're going to kind of start over. Let's go back before we did the transparency here, just like that. And we're going to vectorize this. I'm going to go to my bitmap menu. And in this case, I'm just going to use my auto trace. Auto trace is one of your easiest ways to just get black and white. It can do colors to a certain degree, but it's limited. So don't always expect the color. If you use auto trace, just be aware that colors may not come out right. It sometimes works, but not always. So I'm going to use auto trace, and in Design Central, I get a few options in here. So I can set a tolerance. I usually have it at the default at 50%, and it usually does a pretty good job. I usually always leave my resolution at full. And then this is where I usually change. So depending on how I feel about the noise that's in the file, if it's super pervasive, I may want to set my noise reduction a little bit higher, or how my corners are processed. So if they're processed more normally, they're processed less, or they're processed more. So typically, if you're doing a simple file, a graphic like this, leaving it on the default settings usually is going to do you pretty good. So once I've hit my auto trace, I have to select the object to trace. So I'm going to drag and highlight. And it doesn't look like it's done anything at the moment, but it's done something. It goes pretty quick. I'm going to right click, exit the tool, and then I'm going to click on my bitmap and just move it out of the way. And then here's my vectorized graphic. And this does a pretty good job. In this case, our image wasn't terribly noisy. It was a little bit, but it wasn't terribly noisy, and it wasn't overly pixelated either. We're zooming in quite a ways here. So it's not too bad. So at this point, I can select my object, and by default, right after you vectorize, it always goes to wireframe. So I'm going to go into my fill stroke editor here, turn off the wireframe, and then you're going to notice this happen. It's all going to be black. Now, the reason why it does this is because it traces the objects as an individual piece. And so each piece is an individual part, and they're not really not welded, but they're not compounded together. So that's what I'm going to do next. Typically in a file like this, I'm going to go ahead and hit arrange, compound that, and now I've got the graphic just as it was. Now this now is infinitely scalable. My edges are smooth. I can go back and edit these points if I want to, in case I see something that's wrong or bad or I don't like. And if I go to my effects menu, I can go to contour cut, and I get a really accurate, really good contour cut here. So this in this case, if we can vectorize a file, typically I always recommend going that route if we can, just because you're going to get a better contour cut overall. I do realize in some circumstances it's not always necessary or not possible. So we're going to go through those different examples as we go through here. So I can hit apply and we are set. So let's take a look at another file here. And this one's a little bit worse for wear. So you can see that there's a lot of pixelization here going on. So let's just see, you know, what our vectorizing software can do. So in this particular example, we're going to focus a little more on the vectorizing part than the making transparency part. All right, so looks like there might be a little bit of a stutter here going on. There, oh, there we go. Okay, looks like I had something pop up in the background there. Okay, so sorry if it was a little stuttery there for a second. So we're going to focus on trying to get the raw graphic, because in this case, if we tried to print this is going to come out bad. The noise around here is just terrible. So I'm going to go to my bitmap menu. I'm going to go to vectorize. Now, there's a bunch of different vectorized tools, and a lot of them do a lot of different things. And so it's kind of hard to predict what's really going to go, what's going to happen with each one of these. But I can kind of give you an idea of what each one of them does. So the ones that I most frequently use are auto trace for black and white. I'll even use this one for colors every once in a while too, if there's not too many colors. Sometimes this will do a good job. The other one is color trace. This is more for colors than anything else. And then I use the Bezier if I really want kind of smoother lines, softer, rounder corners, things like that. And then enhance corners. The Bezier, unfortunately, has a preset set of settings to it. You just click it, it does it, can't modify it, it just kind of does its own thing. The enhanced corners, however, is very similar to the auto trace, where it allows me to set tolerances for noise and corner detection and things like that. So this one I like, especially if I'm having issues with a particular file or with the way that it's vectorizing. I like to use these. So let's just try using, instead of the, let's just try the Bezier. In this case, the Bezier did a pretty good job. So you can see in key areas, like in here, it did some significant rounding here. And there's some rounding down here at the bottom of this letter and the top here and here. This is pretty good considering what we had to work with here. So, you know, this is not bad at all. And from here, we can either just let this be, or we could go into our point editing tools and go from there. Let's take the same file and let's do another vectorize. For this time, let's do a enhanced corners. Here I can define how much tolerance I want to give it. So I can say not too much tolerance, but let's try and stay true. There's a lot of noise, so maybe I go a little bit more than half on the noise. And then on my corner detection, I'm going to bump this a little bit higher too, because I want those corners to be sharper rather than round. So I'm going to do that and hit OK. In fact, I might go a little bit farther on the corners here. Oops, I just want to grab the bitmap, move it out of the way. Okay, and now you can see kind of the difference. So this was Bezier. Like I said, it was more of a rounded type. If we look at the differences here, you've got a curved here, a little curves here, curves in here. And we move up here, everything's a lot sharper. So you got sharper edges here, sharper edges here. You know, this is going to be a pretty good vectorize. So sometimes it takes just a little playing with it. And if you think that you've gotten close, or maybe you like the way that it vectorized one letter the way and then another letter it didn't, there's always nothing wrong with combining some of these two to get the best of both worlds. So you might need to run a auto trace and then run a enhanced corners to fix maybe one part that's a little bit blurrier than another. So there's nothing wrong with that. So that's kind of, you know, using those vectorizing tools. Black and white images tend to be pretty good unless the image is really messed up. So, you know, that can cause some issues too. So let's jump into another example here. Now, this one is going to be tailored a little bit more towards contour cutting again. We're going to do some, we could do some vectorization. In fact, we will vectorize this. And then I'm going to go ahead and also, we're going to take a look at how you can modify a contour cut after it's been placed. So let's take a look at this guy, and we're going to zoom out a little bit and move it over here so we got a little more room to work with. By the way, if you guys have any questions or anything, as you think of them throughout the show, go ahead and throw them in the comments. Bennett's here checking those out for me, and he's going to be passing them along to me. So if anything comes up, you know, feel free to ask, and we will try and address as many of those as we can. In fact, if we can address all of them, we will. So just be aware of that. So while we're waiting for some questions, and while you guys are watching here, let's continue on. So first thing we can do is we could make this transparent like we did before. So I could go to Bitmap, click Make Transparent. And even though this is a grayish background, I can click on this. And again, if I have my tolerance set to, I really like tolerance 32. It really is a good middle ground. I can click on that. And the nice thing is here is that because this is just a black and silverish, grayish image, if I click select similar, it's going to select all the holes in the middle too. So I just click on that, and boom, just like that, I've got all these little tiny holes. I don't have to sit there and hit shift click on each one of these, which makes it really nice. I can hit apply, and just like that, I've made that background transparent. Now, again, this is kind of an inherent flaw of using the Make Transparent. Like I said, sometimes it works great. It usually works better with higher resolution images, but you're still going to get a little bit of a pixelization or a little bit of a roughing of the edges. Now, depending on how big you're going to print this, that may not even be a problem. So, you know, it just kind of depends. If you're going to blow this up really big, you probably want to vectorize this. Again, if I go to my bitmap menu now that I've made that transparent, I can click on, effects menu, contour cut, and I can apply contour cut directly. If I choose with holes, it'll actually cut inside the holes as much as possible. I'm going to turn that off though, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of distance. So I'm going to say maybe like 0.6 inches. Maybe I want this to be a contour cut that goes around the edge. But you can see here that I've got a crucial problem, and it's how the contour cut works, right? It's trying to follow the contours as close as possible. So as it gets to these areas, because the space is bigger, it tries to go back down in there, and it creates these little jagged spots. You'll probably run into this quite a bit, especially if you're vectorizing graphics a lot. I'm going to go ahead and apply it. And then what I can do is, the cool thing is here is I can right click on this and say separate contour cut. What this does is it basically just ungroups the contour cut from the original object. When you do a contour cut, it actually groups it together with that object and kind of ties it to it so that as you move the graphic around, it doesn't mess up your alignment. So it's tied to it until you separate it. So if we separate this, I can then go into my point editing tools and I can modify this contour cut and it'll still remain a contour cut. So for example, let's just take this right here. You can get to your point editing tools by going down to the tool right below the rectangle, left click and hold, and you get this menu. Now I've conveniently popped it out here so that I have it up here. And I'm just gonna use one tool. And this is how neat, how cool this is and how easy this is. Use one tool. And I really love this tool because it's super easy. The optimize by 3-point arc. And you can see all these points in here. And I'm just gonna say, well, click here, and maybe let's zoom in a little bit. Maybe I adjust this just so slightly. I hit the enter keyboard, or I hit the green check mark in the bottom in right-hand corner, Design Central. I like to use enter because it's a little quicker. I left click to put my 2 first points down. Then I can use my left click to drag that around. I hit the enter button on my keyboard. And I see we've got some problematic issues right here. In fact, maybe I do this whole section here. I think I want to kind of make it look like that. Hit enter. I'm going to fix this little section down here. Now it did something really weird here, but that's okay. I'm just going to grab this center line and adjust it how I think it's going to be about right, which I think is right there. Hit enter. Right here. Right here. And again, that doesn't look quite right. So I'm going to adjust this just a little bit. Enter. I'm going to exit my tool and boom, just like that, I fixed that contour cut. So when you run into this kind of thing with contour cutting, it's really, really easy to make those changes. I could just go in there, separate the contour cut, use my point editing tools, and there's a variety of things you can do here in your point editing tools. You can, make sharp corners, make a rounded corner. You can even do straighten points. So if you need it to be perfectly straight along the line, you can do that. And that works out just as well. So these point editing tools, honestly, the ones that I use the most are going to be the optimize by 3-point arc, make a sharp corner, and the straight tool. Those are the 3 that I use all the time, and it helps a ton when creating a contour cut. So just like that, I didn't have to fiddle around with drawing a circle and trying to get it centered or any foolishness like that. I could just take the contour cut that it gave me, make a few key little changes in a few seconds, and boom, I've got my contour cut ready to go. Now I can go and take this, I can send this to my printer and cutter, and it's going to see it just fine. So let's go back. Now, I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to grab the original file again. We're going to delete this one. I'm going to come over here, make a copy of it. Just so you know, I hold down the control key. I select my object, I drag it, and when I hit control, you'll see how my cursor changes just a little bit. It has that little plus icon, and then I let go with my left mouse click and it copies it. I do that all the time just as a quick drag option, drag and copy, instead of doing the copy paste, which is fine, but this is kind of a quicker thing. I like to use the keyboard shortcut there. So now I could do this in Vectorize too. So in my opinion, if we do Vectorize, let's do an auto trace. So we'll just leave the settings default, select it, exit the tool, I'll click on the bitmap, get out of the way. And just like that, I've got a really good version of that. Now I can scale this up. I can take the wireframe off. Obviously our holes, like we did before, we just have to compound these. So I'm going to compound them. And now I've got this Jeep military star that I can change the color. I can do whatever I want to this. And print this, contour cut it, same thing. Now, again, I'm going to have the same issue when I apply the contour cut. If I do contour cut again, I'm going to have that same issue. So I would need to modify that. Or, you know, if it depending on the shape, you might end up having, you might actually have a piece of geometry or something that you can already use. You can take, so let's just say we had a circle and let's just say we had a circle that, and can we get any brighter on the orange? Let's turn this to like a dark green or something. And then let's move this to the back so we can kind of see it a little bit better. There we go. Oh, wow, that doesn't look good over that. So let's try, there we go. All right, so now we can adjust this, you know, make it so it's just right, position it, everything like that. What we could do is here, let's do this. Let's just group this together. So grab these, hit Control G to group, or I can right click and group, I believe. No, I cannot. Okay, well, then Control G it is. Control G, group. And then I can select my circle. If I go to arrange, and I go to align, I can say both centers. That'll align it to the center like this. I can then go back and click on my circle. If I go to arrange, I can go to contour cut, and then I can make this shape a contour cut. So when I click make contour cut, it now converts that shape into a contour cut. So, you know, you could do it both ways. Both of them will work great. So those are just two different ways to kind of deal with a graphic like this. So it's kind of a neat little tip and trick you can use. So that's applying a contour cut to that type of graphic. So let's grab this and let's take a look at dealing with kind of a bummer file. So I'm going to copy this one over here. Let's zoom in with this, and we're going to use several different techniques here to kind of get this right. We're going to play around with it and see how it works. But as we see here, we can zoom in here. This file is not ideal. This obviously needs to be vectorized. I would never print this. You know, this has gotten pretty bad, especially down here. I would reproduce this file. So this is one of those ones where I would say, well, man, I don't want to reprint this because this looks pretty terrible. So we're going to use several different vectorizing methods to kind of get us in the zone where we need to be here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to try auto tracing it, see what happens. Exit the tool. Okay, so it looks like it's done some, but it sure looks like this part here is bad. Now, the reason why we're having so much trouble with this part of the graphic specifically is, and I was playing around with this a little earlier, is that there is so much noise in here, and the fact that there's not a very big difference. Well, I mean, for our eyes it sees it, but there's the two factors that we're considering here. First of all, there's so much noise on the inside of this letter that the software is having a hard time distinguishing what's noise and what's not, what's a line. And then we have this color difference, which is not great. It's kind of, there's not high enough contrast, and that can be part of it. So this is the kind of wonky results that we got. And in my experience, when you have something that's that pixelated and is that noisy on the inside, it's going to be pretty difficult to try and fix that. So I'm going to delete that for now. And now I can kind of take a look at this. And for the most part, I'm pretty happy with this. This did a really good job. I could use my color trace on this as well if I wanted to. And it would probably give me a pretty decent result as well. In fact, why don't we try it? Let's try color trace. I'm going to select the object after I click on color trace. And then what I'm doing down here is I can actually tell it what colors I want it to vectorize. So in this case, I can have it vectorize the white, or sorry, the gray and the red. or I can increase the amount of colors, and it's going to start adding some of this back in for me. So you can see that there's a lot of colors here, even though it only looks like there's two. Because of that pixelation, there's a lot of like noise and stuff, which technically are different colors. So yeah, I could come through here and maybe say, well, let's just try these three colors and see how that works. I'm going to leave my edge filter at normal and click apply. Oops, I got to exit out of the tool first. Up here. So in this case, the color trace didn't do that great. One of the things to consider about the color trace is that when you have really pixelated objects like this, there's a lot of different colors that kind of mess up the graphic a little bit. So that didn't come out how I really would like. So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to try one other thing here and see how this works. I'm going to go to Bitmap, Vectorize. I'm going to hit color. And then I'm going to say posterize this. And it's going to give me all the colors that are in the file that it can detect. So you can see here that it's detected multiple shades of gray. It's got the red, the black. And so I'm going to say, you know, let's take this color, and then I'm going to hold down, I'm holding down control. This color, this color, this color, and this color, and let's merge these colors together. Okay, that didn't really do what I wanted it to. So we're going to cancel this and we'll start over. Sometimes if you posterize these, it can give you some better results by doing that. Sometimes it doesn't. You kind of have to just play with it a little bit. So let's posterize. Let's try just vectorizing it and see what it does with these 8 colors and see what happens. So vectorize. It's is that, there you go. That's the, okay, so that's the background. We don't want that. So you can see it did a little bit better job with the letters down below. So this might be a good way to get access to these letters down here. Now, I'm still going to say that this is pretty bad with the color vectorizer. I kind of prefer what the auto trace did. It's much better. Even these letters, to me, these are not worth fixing. So here's what I'm going to tell you to do on this one. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to delete that and say, we like the way that this came out over here. Here, I'm going to actually just open up my Find My Font tool, which if you have the Flexi 19 software, you get a free license for Find My Font. Let's go back to Flexi. I'm going to show you where the Find My Font is. So I'm going to pull up my little cloud window and scooch these over. If you're looking for Find My Font, the download for it is right here. You download it and you can install it. And if you have a Flexi 19 or any kind of subscription, you should be able to get access to the Find My Font. So you can download it here, get it activated, and it'll install as a separate application. So for me, it just installs on the desktop, and then I can pull it up. So that's where you're going to get access to it. And in this case, I'm going to pull it up. And this is a pretty simple program. I'm not going to go into super detail on how to use this, but because this is kind of almost like an episode on itself. But if I open up the file and let's see here, what did I call it? I do not remember. Was it this one? Ah, it was. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just actually going to use the Find My Font to figure out what font this is. And so I'm going to click on my little A to identify this. And so I'm going to click on each letter individually. Okay. And then I'm going to type in my letters here. So retouch, and it is case sensitive there. So hit enter. to process this, and it's going to start looking for fonts on my system. And conveniently enough, it looks like I have impact, which that's, if I click on this, the ones in green are the ones that I actually have on my system, and the ones in red are the ones that found online. So I'm pretty happy with impact. So I'm going to just use that, and that looks actually pretty close. So now I can go back into Flexi and grab my font tool, and what did that, what was the words? Was it retouch? Oops, I guess I gotta actually click on the right font, right? Impact and selection tool, zoom in. And now I can scale this up and put this, I can put this in here and change the color, change the size, and do whatever I needed to. So that was a pretty quick process. I got the graphics that I needed here, and I can turn off the wireframe. So now I've got a pretty decent graphic. Again, we do have to do we have to do that compound for the E there. That fixes that. And so now we've got this graphic again, and all we would have to do is, if we wanted to, you could use the cut by line tool just to cut this off, and then you could have the opportunity to color the top and the bottom of that. So really easy way that we can take a graphic that's not looking so great, and we can easily pull it right back in. This is really good for these images you get online and things like that. So this is here. Here's another one. I just wanted to throw this one in here. We'll get to this basketball one here in a second. I wanted to just throw this one in here just to kind of show you the power of some of the vectorization tools. This is an image I picked up, and it's pretty high resolution, so it's pretty clear. And this font has a very unique thing to it. And I've not been able to find a font that looks like this, or that mimics this exactly. So if I want to get this font, I might want to just vectorize it and go from there, depending on what I'm doing, right? So I can actually just simply go into my effects menu, or sorry, bitmap, go to vectorize. I'm gonna auto trace this guy. I'll give it a second there. I'm gonna right click, hit exit tool. Excuse me. A little bit of a dry throat today. And now I'm gonna drag my bitmap away. And it's actually done a surprisingly good job at vectorizing this. When you have a high resolution image like this, if we zoom in here, you can see that this is very, very high resolution. We're talking pretty crisp lines here. So, and that's zoomed in really, really far. So when you have a good image like this and you need to get the vector graphics off of it, the vectorization software does wonders. Now I've got this really sweet looking font up here, and let's go ahead and just grab this whole section up here. We're going to turn off the wireframe. Again, same thing, compound. And now we've got a letter here that's almost identical and looks really good in quality to the original that we had. So we can kind of zoom in here and we can see it's picked up a lot of the detail that was in that with little to no problems at all. So, good thing is that the higher the resolution, if you need to get something like this into vector, it's pretty easy to do just by using those vectorization tools. Let's zoom out here a little bit. So let's drag this guy out of the way. So you can see kind of the power of some of the vectorization tools can be really, really powerful. This is another example right here of your I think we're going to use the posterize. Let's use the posterize on this one. So let's go to, let's vectorize this. I'm going to vectorize color. And it pulled up these colors in the file. And I can go ahead and vectorize this. I could merge colors if I wanted to, but I think I'm going to be okay. If I'd switch this to, different amounts of colors, I could posterize it down to a more simple version if I wanted to, but I'm pretty good with this. I can vectorize this. The nice thing about posterizing is that it converts the image into more base level colors. So it helps remove some of those pixelated areas or gradients if you need to get rid of a gradient. So in this case, now we've got pretty decent vector lines here that we can deal with. Now I probably wouldn't use the auto trace on this because there's way too many colors for it to deal with. I would use either the color trace or the color option in the vectorize tools to kind of do this. Let's take a look at this little basketball. Here's something that I thought was kind of interesting. I pulled this little graphic off the internet here. And let's zoom in on this guy. And the funny thing is about this one is that there's a few aspects here about this file that are in here, and maybe I don't care about this because I can always apply a gradient later on. That's not important to me really, and neither is maybe this stuff on the edge. Maybe I just want to go ahead and get the raw parts here. So if I were to try and vectorize this with the plain old color trace, this is kind of what you get. It's okay. It's not great though. We can see that it's tried to grab these lines, and you could fix this up a little bit if you really wanted to, but you know what? Let's see if we can get something better. I could probably tweak the settings there a little bit more, change the edge filters, maybe go to fewer colors or maybe go to more colors, and it might help me out a little bit. But I'm not liking that. I'm going to use my color option here again. So I'll select that, bitmap, vectorize, color, and there are a ton of colors in here. And so this is where I kind of start to decide, okay, well, maybe I can start merging some of these, or maybe I can have this posterize it for me to go into one or two different colors. So I see, let's try 3 colors and see how we go, because there's a blue, there's the orange, and then there's the white. In fact, why don't we just go to 2 colors and see what that does? Posterize it. Okay, so that really doesn't give us what we want. So I was thinking maybe 3 would probably be better. So let's delete that. Let's start over with another one. I think if we post, I like to keep making copies. So let's grab this again. Vectorize color. Let's go with 3 or 4. Let's try 4. Posterize. So we got 4 different colors here. And then, so this is what it's done to the graphic now. So it's posterized it with 4 colors. Why don't we go to 3, have it posterize it again? Okay, so now we're looking at a much simpler graphic. We've removed all of the gradients, which are not necessary for us, and kind of eliminated some of the extraneous data. That's kind of what the goal for the color is, and doing the posterize, is it kind of removes those colors that really don't need to be there and kind of merges them into one color. So now I can vectorize this. And let's get rid of that. And now I've got a little bit better, something a little bit better to deal with here. These lines are pretty accurate. They're pretty decent. All I would really need to do probably is come in here and maybe adjust a few little points here and there. Maybe straighten this guy out. So if we came in here with my point editing tools, maybe I could grab my point editor and, straighten that guy out. you know, maybe do some things. I could go into my straighten lines. I could say straighten this line from here to here. Hit enter, straighten that out a little bit. You know, I could make some changes to this, but now I've got something that's way more workable than it was before. Because if I just simply vectorize how we did it before, man, that was like a ton of work. There's a ton of stuff there. So you would have had to do point editing like crazy. So just doing a few steps with the posterize, this allows us to kind of simplify the graphic a little bit, and then you can extract those little pieces. Then if you want to later, you can actually go back and try and vectorize that again and pull out the little circles and other things to see if you could maybe add those in to make a better graphic overall. So you could come in here and do another vectorize, pull in those little circles and add them in. And then that way you can kind of put together a file using several different tools. So we've been going for quite a while. This last one, I think we'll kind of just brush over this one real quick, and then we'll see if any of you guys have questions. So by the way, if you have any questions, shout them out. We'd be glad to take a look at some of those questions. So here's another one. If we zoom in, again, this looks pretty pixelated. If I click on this file, we can look at our resolution settings. It's a fairly decent resolution in terms of size, but the megabytes are pretty high. But man, it's bad news. So, and the other thing that it shows us here is that there's actually a transparency here. So I'm actually going to remove that transparency, and it kind of shows us what's in the background here. So it looks like they put some kind of transparent, or they made the background transparent because it was black. And so let's try and vectorize this. And this would be probably another good example for us to use our color. And maybe we would just want to posterize this down to like 3 colors again. Let's merge. So here's what you can do also. If maybe this looks a little weird, so I'm gonna say go grab this color and let's merge these together. There we go. And so we can kind of merge that to make that a little bit simpler. Vectorize it. That's our background. We can get rid of that. And not the greatest for sure. In this case, the posterize didn't really do us any good because we didn't have any control over how the file got created. So in this case, maybe instead of posterize, let's do something else. I probably would actually I'll have to re-import that file again. Leaf, I think is what I called it. Yeah, there we go. So let's go back in here, remove the transparency, and let's see what a regular old auto trace will do for us. Oh, in this case, it doesn't like that background that we've done for it. So that's probably not going to work. So let's try one of our other options. Let's try the enhanced corners and see. Let's do this. Let's bump this up a little bit higher here. And let's do sharper corners. Okay, so in this case, it looks like this file is really having a hard time with that transparency. And this is what you get for pulling images off the internet. Some of them are problematic. So let's try doing another enhanced corner with the. Now see it every time it does that. So here's what we're going to do is we're going to do this. Here's another little trick you can do if you have a bitmap that's giving you kind of trouble like this. So I'm going to keep the transparency on there. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to go to bitmap. I'm going to rasterize this. And let's just make sure we put it at a high quality so we don't lose any quality. And then hit OK. All right, so now what we've done is we've rasterized that. So this image no longer has a transparency associated with it, or it shouldn't anymore. Yeah, we're good there. So now let's try using one of our vectorization tools, enhance corners, and see if this will help us. Yeah, much better. Okay, so there's another trick on that one. When you get stuff off the internet or you get stuff from customers, sometimes it can have these weird quirks about them. I don't know what's the deal with this, with the transparency. It seems like it's messing something up. So now we can kind of come in here and evaluate this and see what we want to do. In this case, I think there's a lot more work to be done. So I would probably say, let's do that enhanced curves again, or maybe even do a Bezier. Let's see if a Bezier will give us a better result. And in fact, I think it might. A little bit better, but not great. So this one might be one of those ones because of what we've done with the file. We may have to do a little more work with it. But let's try one more thing here. Let's go to Bitmap, Vectorize, Enhance Corners, and let's bump up our tolerance here really high and our noise suppression really high. And then let's bump these down, the corner detection, make this a little bit rounder. And hit OK. Okay, so this is a little bit better. This definitely is better than the others for sure. So again, not the greatest, but it is a little bit better. So, you kind of have to mess around with some of these. And this is one of those particular files that might be not worth, just call it a day. And the good thing is here, though, is that if we go into our point editing tools, again, it makes it really easy. So I can use my 3-point tool, and I can fix every single problem from this point down here at the bottom all the way to the top in one click. Just like that, I fixed that entire piece. And I can do big chunks of corrections really, really quickly. So if I absolutely had to clean this graphic up, it actually wouldn't be too bad. Like I'd maybe probably spend 5 or 10 minutes on it, but if it were absolutely necessary, I could probably do it. So let's see, now that we've rasterized this, let's see what our color trace does. Actually, I'm kind of curious because our auto trace. Our auto trace actually usually is pretty good at dealing with some of this. Oh, I'm still in the tool. There we go. Let's get out of there. Let's delete this. Auto trace. Zoom out a little bit more. Not too bad. Still kind of bad though. So I'm looking at kind of the same things here. This one is a little bit overly pixelated, not in a fuzzy manner, but the problem is that the resolution, we have such huge steps here in between. This is what's kind of causing us a little bit of a problem. But it's a good start. I can go in here, edit these points, and get a fairly smooth within fairly quickly. So I know we kind of spent a lot on vectorizing and how to apply a contour cut. I just want to kind of go over some of those things and kind of give you the idea of, hey, let's look at some files. Let's see how they react, see how they vectorize, and just kind of walk through some real examples, just images off of Google that are great. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great, because you're going to be running into this stuff all the time. And if you want to be able to apply these contour cuts and work with some of these graphics, you'll have to go through a lot of this stuff to kind of do it. So let's check. Do we have any questions so far? No questions. All right. So just, let us know if you guys have any questions. If you're not watching this live, and this is kind of for those folks who might be watching it later, if you end up watching this later and it's not live and you have a question, throw it in the comments section and we'll actually address it in our next live session. So feel free to do that as well. So if you have a question later or something like that. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. we thought that it would be a good idea just to jump into some practical examples that you guys might run into, because we see this all the time. And honestly, I would love to say that there's a, hey, this is the thing you need to do to make it better. That's not always going to happen. I find myself more often than not actually combining multiple different techniques to fix a file or to produce the results that I want. So just like this one that we did with the fix to retouch, we decided that half vectorize, and then we would recreate the other half with using Find My Font. So use all the tools that Flexi has, available to you so you can make some of these changes. We use the point editing tools. The point editing tools are super easy to use. We actually have a webinar. If you guys are interested in learning more about the point editing tools, we have a webinar where I specifically went over each and every one of those point editing tools and what each and every one of them does and how they work, with a little example on how they work. So check out that episode. It's on our YouTube channel. Check out our webinars playlist for Flexi. You'll see it on there. If you want more information about how to use those point editing tools, they're easy to use. Check that out. It'll be worth a watch. So, all right. Well, glad you guys were able to join us. Still no questions. So glad you guys were able to join us. We had quite the group today, so that's good. Just remember, we do this live every Wednesday, so feel free to join us, 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We pick different topics. Typically, we try and do practical stuff that you guys would be interested in, that helps you guys use Flexi in a better way so that you guys can get the most out of your software. So those are the kind of topics. If you have a topic suggestion, throw it in the comments. Again, we're looking for user input. So if you guys have a topic you'd like us to cover, we'd love to take that feedback. So leave those in the comments and we'll check it. So hopefully you guys like this, and we will sign out for now. Again, if you want to get notifications that we're going live, subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that little notification thing. That'll let you know that we're live. But again, we do it every Wednesday. So take a look at that. So, all right, well, you guys have a good rest of your week. Hopefully you guys doing well, and we will see you guys next week. Next week, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Join us. We'll have something good for you. We'll see you guys later.